Imagine, as an actor, being given the opportunity to play a character that is loved by people worldwide. She's a strong individual who knows her power, and she makes sure that nobody doubts her abilities. She's incredibly intelligent and able to overcome any challenge. She is flamboyant, sassy, unique, popular. Now, from what I've said, what is this character's ethnicity? So the character that I've been describing is my own interpretation of Glinda from the Broadway show Wicked, a musical I hope you're all familiar with. If you aren't, just be sure that everything I said about her is 100% accurate. Any actor with the opportunity to play her would be ecstatic. However, so far, only women with a fair skin tone have been cast in this role. Is there something innate in Glinda's characterization that is suggestive of a specific skin tone? Would a darker-skinned Glinda somehow take away from the character? Or is this casting only in keeping with the original interpretation? We are told today that racism is no longer a major issue. We are told that our opportunities will not be limited based on where we come from. We are told that in today's progressive and modern world, we are all equal. However, in many cases, as I'm sure most of you are aware, this is false. So, I'm a student who's always had an interest in theater. I've been in 4 school plays, and it wasn't until recently that I realized that the color of my skin was causing people to question how legitimate of an actor I was. Last year, I took part in my school's rendition of The Sound of Music. I tried out for the role of Liesel, but ended up being casted in the lead role of Maria. Now, I definitely wasn't expecting this, as I had no prior experience when it came to musicals, and I'd never been cast as a lead in any other play before. I was beyond thrilled to have this opportunity. Even more thrilled to be double cast as Maria with one of my close friends. For those of you who are unaware, being double casted means that someone else plays the same role as you, and when it comes down to the performances, you each perform for half of the total number. Since we had 4 shows, I played Maria for 2 of them, and my friend played Maria for the other half. Now, it's important to note that my friend is white and has brown hair, while I am brown and have black hair. She's from America, and I'm from India. In terms of our looks, yes, we're pretty different, but when it came down to our acting abilities, we met each other measure for measure. And yet the general public seemed to think otherwise. Whenever I would tell people that I was casted as Maria, and then mention that my friend was also casted as her, the most common question I would be asked was, "Oh, so are you like her understudy or something?" Initially, I was quite taken back with the question and would just respond with a simple no. Being double casted just means that we both play the same role. But as I got asked this question over and over and over again, it really started to bother me. No one was asking, "Is she your understudy?" So the next time someone assumed that I was the understudy, I asked them, "Well, why did you think that?" Their response, "Oh, well, it's just because your friend looks more like a Maria." Let's pause here for a moment. So people were understanding that I was an understudy for my white friend who played the other half of our role because her skin and hair color somehow made her more legitimate, which then means that my brown skin and black hair made my representation inauthentic. I think you can see how and why this really bothered me. Is the way a character has been previously cast the only way to cast that character in the future? For instance, I'm sure many of you have heard of the popular play Harry Potter and the Cursed Child that takes place in London. We all know and loved Emma Watson's interpretation of Hermione, but when Noma Dimsweni, a black actress, was cast to play her in the show, people were not happy. And why? Simply because Hermione is not black. Firstly, this is actually false, as J.K. Rowling herself clarified on Twitter, saying that what she wrote in the books was brown eyes, very clever, and frizzy hair. White skin was never specified. There was no evidence against Hermione being black. People were just unwilling to see a different interpretation. And to this I ask, why? We are in a progressive world, are we not? The negative judgment a person of color faces when they are cast in a historically white role should not be something they have to go through. No one should feel limited by their physical appearance. I remember being part of a different production where I went to dress rehearsal and ended up not being able to get my makeup done because the makeup department didn't have anything dark enough to match my skin tone. In my lifetime, I've basically been accustomed to things not being available for my skin tone, so it seemed completely normal when there was nothing suitable for myself at dress rehearsal. However, the experience only led me to wonder how many professional actors have had to go through the same thing, if not worse. Now, it would be wrong of me to say that there has been no improvement in this issue over time. We have seen progress in the theater in several different places. For example, the hit Broadway show Hamilton has a cast where all actors who play the founding fathers of America and other historical figures are not white. The most common argument that people will have against this casting is that in real life, these people were actually white men. So it's more realistic to have them played by white actors in theater, right? To this, let's go back to Glinda. What was it that made her such a memorable and iconic character? It was her actions, her decisions, her personality, and her unique traits. None of it had anything to do with the color of her skin. In the same way, it was Alexander Hamilton's journey that made Lin-Manuel Miranda's adaptation of the story so iconic. Additionally, no one seems to take issue when it's the other way around, and ethnic roles, which are often very limited in number, are played by white actors. For example, there's a Broadway show called Prince of Egypt, which focuses around the life of Moses, an Abrahamic prophet who would have lived in Egypt around 1200 BC. This show has had the role of Moses played consecutively by 3 actors with fair skin tones. In so many ways, we are not seeing the diversity that we should be seeing throughout the theater. A surprising amount of people will hear this argument and claim that this is racist in itself. They ask, so it's okay for ethnic actors to play white roles, but it's not okay for white actors to play ethnic roles? Isn't that hypocritical? To this, I would like to remind everyone that reverse racism is not a thing. Anthony Morgan, a civil rights lawyer based in Toronto, helps to disprove this theory. He states that when it comes to history, white people have faced significantly less persecution for the color of their skin in comparison to other races. Yes, instances have occurred, and the stories and experiences of any person who has faced systematic oppression, job discrimination, police brutality, etc., is valid. However, the extent to which white people have experienced these events is significantly less than the extent to which other races have. There's a quote I like from a show called Dear White People that helps to break down reverse racism as its core. It defines the term racism as a system of disadvantage based on race, and then goes on to explain that non-white races do not stand to benefit from such a system, directly explaining why reverse racism is not real. This theory is not a valid argument. According to the Asian American Performers Action Coalition, from 2014 to 2015, 84.5% of all Broadway play actors and 74% of all Broadway musical actors were white. Just by looking at these stats, it's easy to see that the theater is dominated by white actors. One of the major reasons for this is that ethnic actors are limited to roles that are written for their specific race and ethnicity. As stated earlier, these are often limited in number, and most often focus on solely ethnic issues rather than universal themes. For instance, West Side Story, Miss Saigon, The King and I, Book of Mormon, Hairspray. These are all shows into which actors with ethnic backgrounds are pigeonholed into. This then causes these actors to question, were they cast in this role because of their talent? Or was it simply because they look the part? This idea that actors of color are casted solely for their looks devalues both their experiences as a person of color as well as a professional actor. Knowing all this, what are actors of color supposed to do? They are constantly having to take steps in ensuring that they are able to play the roles that they deserve to. For example, in television, Mindy Kaling wrote an entire show called The Mindy Project, where she plays the lead role of a doctor. Reese Witherspoon, who co-stars with Kaling in a different production, wrote about a conversation they had together that was published in an article in Glamour magazine. Witherspoon writes, "When I asked Mindy Kaling, 'Don't you ever get tired of having to write roles for yourself?' She responded with, 'Reese, I've never had anything that I didn't write for myself before.'" This just emphasizes how scarce the options are for actors of color. Lin-Manuel Miranda was put in the exact same situation when a fan tweeted him saying, "My greatest dream is to one day reach Lin-Manuel Miranda's levels of casting myself in things I write." Miranda responded with, "Oh, it's easy. Step 1, realize being an actor of color means that no one will write your dream role for you. Step 2, get to writing. Step 3, repeat." On a more positive note, this just shows how capable actors of color are in their creative endeavors. Because of their situation, they are forced to be more than just actors. They have to be the writers, the directors, the composers to get to where they want to be. Once again, this just shows that actors of color are just as capable as their white counterparts. We exist in a world where there is a heavy bias towards white people in theater. Right now, I look back at my experience playing Maria in The Sound of Music, and I feel proud. But there is a possibility that I will look back one day and instead feel lucky. Lucky to have played a white role. My story is evidently not one in isolation. Actors of color have been made out to be the collective understudies of our community. Inadequate, irrelevant, typecast. In this room alone, there is not just one race represented. Why should it be any different in theater? Despite what everyone said, I went on stage and played a role that has been historically played by a white woman, and my ethnicity had no bearing on my performance. There are so many actors who are striving to do the same at a higher level of theater. Representation is incredibly important because it creates visibility. Aspiring actors are constantly having to shy away from their dream role of performance because they don't see actors of their color performing on stage, and going into theater is not seen as a realistic career option. Juilliard, one of the most prestigious performing arts schools in the world, has a very diverse student body, especially in comparison to the national average. However, we are not seeing this diversity translate onto the stage. Imagine the difference it could make for a young person's career path if they were able to feel represented throughout the theater. If we can raise general awareness about the lack of ethnic diversity there is in theater, and if we can acknowledge the lack of empathy there is for how this situation creates a hierarchy, then there is hope that we can make a change. Hope for a future where race-based casting is no longer prevalent, a future where we are only judged by our abilities, a future where we are all undeniably equal. Thank you.